Hey guys, we're starting a new series this week on navigating doubts and questions and confusion when it comes to our faith. It's going to be a 5-week long series, and this week is basically just going to be an introduction. The goal of this week is for students to understand that experiencing doubt and confusion when it comes to your faith is a pretty normal part of the Christian experience. All Christians throughout history will say walk this imperfect path of faith, where their faith is sometimes really strong and sometimes extremely weak and sometimes somewhere in the middle. And that's true of great Christians who have changed the course of history with their faith. And so it's fairly normal to experience doubts and questions, and we want students to understand that in an effort, hopefully, to make them willing to confess and talk about their doubts if they have them, instead of trying to deal with them or being afraid of them in isolation. And then we'll talk a little bit towards the end of the lesson about how Christ has mercy and God has mercy on us in the midst of our doubts. That'll be a thread that runs through the lesson as well. So questions are pretty straightforward for this week. Ask them if they have questions, comments, clarifications, anything that they want to hit on first. See if there's anything that they bring up. If not, you can jump down to number 2. I'm going to have 4 quotes by Charles Spurgeon, John Calvin, Eugene Peterson, and C.S. Lewis are the 4 guys that all have a quote about the prevalency of doubt just in general, or even when it comes to their own faith. I will print those and cut them into 4 strips and attach that to each one of the discussion question sheets. So when you grab your questions, you'll have those attached, and you can, when it comes to question 2, pass those out to 4 people that want to read and have them just read those one at a time. Make sure people know who those people are. They're more powerful when you know who C.S. Lewis is, John Calvin, a leader of the Reformation, Charles Spurgeon, the Prince of Preachers, people called him, and Eugene Peterson, more of a modern, prevalent theologian, that these are Christians that have done great things for the Lord. So explain who the people are, have the quotes read, and then maybe just discuss them for a moment, see if students like one over the other, which one their favorite is, which one they relate to the most. Just have a brief discussion on those. Then question 3 is kind of a 2-parter. Why do you think, number 1, why do you think people are often afraid or scared to admit that they're having doubts and that they have questions about their faith? Why are they scared to admit that to other people? And maybe I would ask these one at a time. That's a great question for students to think about, and I think there's a lot of good answers. I think especially for students that have grown up in the church, who have 2 believing parents, to feel doubt and confusion and questions around their faith can be extremely scary to confess that to anybody, because they feel so much pressure on them to believe from their parents, and that can be that can happen in a home with 2 parents that are handling things really well, or 2 Christian parents that are maybe a little too domineering when it comes to their faith. It can happen in both situations. We can fear being judged by people. We can fear if we have doubts and if we admit that out loud, does that mean that we're not actually saved? We're not actually Christians? We fear, I think some people are worried to express doubts and ask questions to people because they may be worried I'm not going to find an adequate answer to the question that I have, and so I don't want to ask it, because that might lead to my whole worldview and whole system of beliefs come crumbling down, because I don't have answers, or no one has answers to these questions. Lots of potential reasons. I'm sure you and students can come up with others as well. And then a second question is more of a personal question. Are there people in your life who you would feel comfortable expressing doubts surrounding your faith to? So that's kind of part one of the question. Are there people like that in your life? If there are, what makes you feel comfortable doing that around them versus other people who you might be a little more afraid to have that conversation with? So that opens up a conversation about what kinds of people we might feel comfortable doing this with. That kind of even lends itself to some of the things we'll discuss in question 4 or 5. Question 4 comes from Jude 22, which is a verse that we'll cover in the lesson. Jude writes, Jude 22, have mercy on those who doubt. I'm going to bring that verse up in the main lesson, and I'm mostly going to talk about how incredible that is to be in Scripture, that God inspired a verse like that He has mercy on the doubter, and He wants us to have mercy on those who doubt as well. And so we're just going to kind of revel in that verse during the lesson, and in discussion groups you guys can press in a little bit to what does that actually look like to fulfill that command to have mercy on those who doubt. So what does that look like for me as an individual? What are things that I can do to be merciful to those who doubt? And then more big picture, what can the broader church, what could Life Point Church do, or a church in general do to have mercy, be merciful, be gracious to those who doubt? I've got some answers brainstormed there for you. I won't read through all of them necessarily. I think, again, you and students can probably come up with some as well. There's not a clear cut and dry answer to this. There's lots of potential answers. Individually, I think patience is a huge one. We have to, a huge part of being merciful to the doubter is to be patient with them, because it often takes a lot longer to work with them through doubts, through questions, through a difficult season of faith than we think it should, or we would like for it to. We want to show up to one meeting, one conversation, give them all the answers that we think they need, and for them to accept those and then walk away all better. And that's just almost never how that actually works out. And so it takes a great deal of patience to bear with those who are doubting. We might have to chase after them. Jesus does that to Peter in one of the stories that we're going to talk about. He goes to Peter to kind of restore him, chases after Peter in the aftermath of a spiritual failure, and a spiritual failure that came from doubt. So read through those answers. The church in general, we should teach apologetics at the church, can help with doubts, but we also have to teach it in the right way. Teaching apologetics as if it has all of the answers to every question, and if you don't accept these answers, then you're just stupid, can actually... Apologetics is supposed to help with doubt, and it can actually make it worse if we teach it that way. We have to teach it with humility and recognize it doesn't actually have the answer to a satisfying, perfect answer to every single question is not found in apologetics, and we've got to be aware of that and teach it with humility. Having a good community of people that the church can do a good job of cultivating that to where people are actually sharing from their personal lives what's going on in their own faith, so that when they're going through a difficult season, there will be others that are around them, close to them, that will know about that. Again, other answers that you can think of. Last question is, why is it important for us to realize that we are not saved by having absolutely certain faith or absolutely certain belief? That salvation doesn't come from, I've arrived at this place of no doubting, no questioning, no confusion, absolutely certain, absolutely confident about my faith. That's not actually what salvation is. First, you want to kind of ask them, is that actually true? And how would you defend that from Scripture? And then why is that? How does that pertain to this conversation? And why is that important? The defense would be Satan and the demons believe with absolute certainty. They know that God is real. They know what Christ has done. They know all of those things without a shadow of a doubt, stronger than any of us know them, and they're not saved. There's more to saving faith than just having sure, confident belief in who God is, in apologetics, in some of those things. And so developing a confident faith that pushes through doubts is important. That's something that we should try to do. But a lot of Christians, I think, put that as that's the bar to be saved. Once I clear this bar of I don't have any more doubts anymore, I don't have any questions anymore, then I'm a Christian, then I've actually been saved. That's the threshold that I have to meet in order to get into heaven. And that's a really difficult threshold to ever meet, number one. And number two, it's a difficult threshold to sustain. So you'll have dips in your faith where sometimes you feel extremely confident and then sometimes you don't. And so if your assurance of salvation is riding on that, then you're going to go through seasons where you're positive that you're a Christian, and then seasons where you're certain that you're not because you're doubting and you're not certain about your faith. And so that's not the threshold, not the bar, the standard that we necessarily want to hold, albeit we should pursue a confident faith. Obviously, we should try to push through doubts. So that's the questions for this week. Let me know if you have any questions ahead of time, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.